My parents want me to hand over my coffee shop to my brother who knows nothing about business because he needs a job. My parents want me to hand over my coffee shop to my brother who knows nothing about business because he needs a job. My family has always been complicated. I do not know whether to call it favoritism or simply a tacit hierarchy, but for as long as I can remember, my parents have put my younger brother, Mark, on a pedestal. He is the golden child, the perfect younger son who can do no wrong, even if he literally does nothing. Meanwhile, I was always the responsible daughter, the one who had to prove her worth over and over again just to get a good job from them, and all of this came to a head a few months ago. Since I finished college, I have been working with my parents in a family business, a coffee shop. It was not much when we started. We barely had any customers and good days were rare, but I worked like crazy to make it grow. I designed the menu, created social media accounts, started online promotions, and eventually, we managed to position ourselves as the neighborhood's favorite spot. My parents were always proud of our family business, and they loved to say that we were a team. But what I did not realize until now is that I was the only one who was really doing all the work. A few months ago, my parents said they wanted to talk to me about the future of the coffee shop. Honestly, I thought this would be the moment when they would officially hand over the reins to me. They always said that someday it would be my business. They always led me to believe that all this hard work would be worth it because I was building something that would be mine. But no. Instead, they told me that they were going to pass the torch to Mark. According to them, I had done enough. And now it was my brother's turn to prove his worth. Prove his worth? Mark, who does not even know how to make a coffee. Mark, who has had more jobs than months in a year because he always quits them. Mark, who literally does not even drink coffee. When I asked them what this meant for me, my mom said, well, you could teach your brother everything you know so he can take over smoothly. And then, maybe you can find something else you are passionate about. You have done a lot, honey. You have done a lot, honey. I almost burst out laughing. All my effort, all the sacrifices, all the years of dedicating myself to the business. And now I just had to teach my brother and leave. I tried to explain to them that this was unfair, that I was the one who made the business grow, that if Mark took over, he would ruin it. But they would not listen. My dad said something like, you have to understand that Mark needs this opportunity. You have always been strong and capable. You know you can succeed anywhere, but your brother needs this more than you. The worst part was that Mark was there while we were talking with that arrogant smile of his without even trying to defend me or thank me. I think he was even amused by the drama. I could not sleep that night. I felt betrayed in a way I cannot describe. It was not just the business. It was the fact that my parents, the people who were supposed to support me, basically told me that it did not matter, that everything I had done could be ignored because Mark needed it more. I am devastated. I do not know what to do. For now, I am still working there because I do not want to leave the customers and the team I worked so hard to build, but every day is more difficult. Update 1. It is incredible how much things can change in such a short time and not exactly for the better. It has been 8 months since the first post. Many told me to just walk away to find something better. And although at first, I thought it was impossible, I decided to start planning my exit. It was not easy working at the coffee shop knowing that they were going to take it away from me to give it to Mark. It was like a wound that would not stop bleeding. My parents acted as if everything was fine, as if I agreed with this absurd transition. My mom even started telling me that I should be more patient with Mark because he does not have your experience, but he will surely learn quickly with your help. The last straw was when Mark started bringing his girlfriend, Tiffany, to the business as if she owned the place. Tiffany has no interest in the coffee shop beyond its aesthetics for Instagram. One day, I saw her taking pictures at the counter, moving the cups and cakes around to make them look better while telling me that the place needed a more modern touch. I wanted to yell at her that she knew nothing about what really made a business work, but I swallowed my words because I was too tired to fight. Then Mark started firing the staff we had hired. Some had been with us for years, but according to Mark, we needed new faces, fresher ones, that fit the vibe I want to give the place. That was the last straw. So one day, I just quit. I did not make a big announcement or a scene. I finished my shift, went to the staff room, grabbed my things, and left. When my mom called me the next day to ask why I had not gone to work, I told her it was not my problem anymore. Finding another job was difficult at first. My entire resume was focused on the coffee shop, and I felt as if the whole world was reminding me of how much I had lost. But I finally got a job at a local coffee shop that was looking for someone with experience. The owner is a very kind older man who really appreciates my work. It is not the same as having my own business, but at least here I feel that my effort is valued. Meanwhile, things at the family coffee shop started to go downhill, just as many of you predicted. Mark fired almost all the staff and brought his friends to work with him. People with no experience who treated customers as if they were doing them a favor by serving them. He changed the menu, eliminating some of the most popular dishes and tried to raise prices to attract a more exclusive clientele. Customers started disappearing rapidly. The reviews on social media were brutal. Comments like, "This place used to be amazing, but now it is a disaster. The service is terrible, and the new prices are not worth it," started appearing every week. My parents began to get nervous. My mom called me several times, at first to ask for advice on how to fix things, but then to try to convince me to come back. According to her, it was not fair that I walked away from something we had built together, when clearly, for them, I was disposable. I told her that I had already done enough, just as they told me when they decided to give everything to Mark. Mark, of course, did not even try to fix anything. It was always his style when something gets tough. He just quits. I recently heard that he was considering selling the coffee shop equipment to get some money back. It does not surprise me in the least. I'm not going to lie. Seeing everything fall apart has given me mixed feelings. On the one hand, it hurts because I worked so hard to build that place. But on the other hand, I cannot help but feel that this is exactly what they deserved. Update 2. It has been 6 months since I left the family coffee shop. And although it was difficult to adapt at first, I now feel that I made the best decision of my life. But, as I imagined, things for my family have only gotten worse. First, the obvious: the coffee shop closed. It does not surprise me, to be honest. From the moment Mark started running the business, it was doomed. His friends, the ones he hired as employees, were a total disaster. They arrived late, forgot orders, and according to a customer I still know, they even argued with each other in front of the diners. Then there was the money problem. Mark did not know how to manage finances. He raised prices absurdly, but did not invest in improving the service or quality, so the few customers who kept coming ended up fed up. After a couple of months without being able to pay the rent for the premises, the landlord simply evicted them. My parents were devastated. I do not know if it was because they finally understood that they had made a mistake by giving everything to Mark, or because they were facing the financial consequences. Maybe both. What I do know is that they started selling things from the house to pay off the accumulated debts. And as many of you could guess, Mark was not there to help them. At first, my parents tried to justify him. "Mark is going through a difficult time," my mom would say, "or he is busy looking for a new opportunity." But the truth was much simpler. Mark simply disappeared. I heard that he and Tiffany moved to another city shortly after the coffee shop closed. They did not leave an address. They did not answer calls. And when they finally managed to contact him, he told them something like, "That was your problem, not mine." The irony is almost poetic, but it is also sad, this whole mess they made themselves, and now they are begging me for help. Yes, you read that right. My parents, who took everything from me to give it to Mark, are now constantly calling me to support them in this difficult time. My mom told me with a voice that sounded reproachful that I should open another coffee shop because that is what you are good at, and family should always help each other. Family should always help each other. That phrase made me laugh out loud. Where was that philosophy when they decided to give my business away to Mark? Where was it when they told me I had done enough and should look for something else I was passionate about? Of course, I told them no. I reminded them that they decided that Mark was the right person to run the business. If they want help, they should ask him. I do not know if the original betrayal hurt more or the nerve they now have to ask me for something after everything they did. As for me, I'm in a much better place. My job at the other coffee shop has been a relief in many ways. The owners are kind and value my experience. But beyond that, I am starting to regain my confidence. I have been saving and reflecting a lot on what I want to do in the long term. One thing is for sure, I do not plan to work with my family ever again. My only concern is that I do not know how I will handle the constant pressure of their calls and messages. Now they are getting more insistent, even a little manipulative. My mom cries on the phone, saying they have nowhere else to turn, that they need me. My dad, on the other hand, tries to appeal to guilt, reminding me that they gave me everything when I was young. But I cannot forget what they did. I cannot just pretend everything is okay because now they need something from me. Maybe it is selfish, but I do not feel that I owe them anything. Mark is still out of the picture. According to a cousin, he is sleeping on a friend's couch because he broke up with Tiffany. I guess she realized that he had nothing more to offer her. It is almost funny to think about how my parents sacrificed everything for him, and now he does not lift a finger for them. I think what surprises me the most is how liberating it feels to see everything fall into place, not because I wished for it, but because finally everyone is facing the consequences of their own decisions. Update 3. Almost 2 years have passed since this roller coaster began, and what has happened since my last update is something I never imagined. If I thought I had seen it all, I was wrong. Things in my family have taken an even more dramatic turn, and this time I have witnessed their complete downfall firsthand. First, a quick summary: my parents are ruined, literally. After losing the coffee shop, the money, and apparently also their dignity, They have been reeling from crisis to crisis. The final blow was when the bank took their house. I do not know if it is because they used the property as collateral to pay off the business debts or because they stopped paying the mortgage trying to stay afloat, but they are now officially homeless. The news came to me through my aunt, my mom's sister, who is as frustrated with them as I am. According to her, my parents were sleeping in their car for a few days and then tried to move in with her. But their relationship with my aunt has not exactly been good in recent years, and after a few days of putting up with their attitude, she kicked them out. And guess who was the next person they turned to? Exactly me. First, it was a text message from my mom. Something vague, like, "We need to talk. Things are complicated." I ignored the message because I already knew where this was going. Then came the calls, not one or two, but several a day. At first, I ignored them, but then my dad left me a voicemail where he basically accused me of being ungrateful. "Is this how you treat the family that raised you? We cannot believe you are turning your back on us in our most difficult moment. We thought you were better than this." That message infuriated me. I did not answer, but hearing it awakened all those feelings of betrayal that I had tried to leave behind. A few days later, they showed up at my apartment unannounced. I do not even know how they got my address, but there they were, with suitcases and long faces. My mom started crying as soon as I opened the door, saying something like, "We have nowhere to go. Please do not abandon us." I did not know what to do at that moment. It was all so sudden, so intense, that I ended up letting them in. They sat on my couch, my mom whimpering while my dad tried to explain their situation as if it was something that had happened by accident. But what surprised me was that even then there was no real apology. There was no, "We are sorry for how we treated you," or "We understand that we failed you." Instead, my dad said something like, "We know you are capable, you always have been. If anyone can help us out of this situation, it is you." Those words chilled me. There it was, once again. In their minds, the responsible daughter who can always fix everything. The one who can carry the weight of everyone else's mistakes. I told them no. I explained that although it pained me to see them in this situation, I could not take care of them. I reminded them how they betrayed me, how they took everything from me to give it to Mark, and how they did not listen to my warnings when I said that he would ruin everything. I told them that I had spent a long time building my independence and that I was not going to sacrifice my stability for them. My mom burst into tears. My dad, on the other hand, became furious. He started yelling that I was being selfish, that family should always be there to support each other, that they had given me everything when I was a child, and that now it was my turn to return the favor. Finally, I asked them to leave. It was not easy, but I was not going to let them manipulate me either. After almost an hour of arguments and pleas, they finally left. My mom was still crying as she went down the stairs, and my dad kept muttering something about how ungrateful I was. Since that day, they have been slandering me to the rest of the family. According to my aunt, my parents are saying that I am an ungrateful daughter who abandoned them in their time of need. But to my surprise, many people in the family are not buying their story. Most already know how they are and understand why I made the decision I made. As for Mark, he is still completely missing. No one knows exactly where he is, but someone mentioned seeing him working as a waiter in a cheap restaurant. Ironically, it seems he is finally doing something remotely related to the coffee business, albeit involuntarily. I, on the other hand, am moving forward. The work at the local coffee shop has been stable, but I recently received an opportunity that has me excited. An investor wants to open a new cafe in town and offered me the opportunity to manage it. This time, it will be mine without family interference or manipulation. Update 4. It has been a year since I last wrote, and although at the time I believed that everything was practically resolved, it seems that my story with my family has not quite ended. This past year has been a whirlwind of emotions, new beginnings, and, of course, more family drama. I will start with the positive because I am honestly proud of how things have changed for me. The new cafe I mentioned in my last update opened 8 months ago, and it has been a success from day one. I worked hand in hand with the investor to design the concept, the menu, and the aesthetics of the place. We wanted something that felt cozy but modern, a space where people would want to stay, not just stop by for a quick coffee. When I say that all of this has been a labor of love, I am not exaggerating. I was involved in every detail, from selecting the furniture to testing every recipe for the menu. It was exhausting, but seeing everything come to life was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Opening day was emotional. The community really responded, and several of my former customers from the family coffee shop showed up to support me. Many of them told me that they had missed the warmth and quality the other place had before everything fell apart, and hearing that filled me with pride, but also with a bit of melancholy. That chapter of my life remains a wound that has not completely healed. Now, what I know, many want to know what has happened to my family. My parents are at a critical point. Since I kicked them out of my apartment last year, They have been bouncing between the homes of relatives and friends. No one seems to want to have them for long, which does not surprise me considering their attitude. My aunt told me that even when they are asking for help, they still maintain this kind of air of superiority as if the world owes them something. The fact that my parents are in this situation has not changed their narrative about me despite everything. They keep telling anyone who will listen that I am an ungrateful daughter who abandoned them. But what has surprised me is how that narrative is slowly falling apart. A few months ago, a cousin of mine decided to confront them at a family gathering. I was not there to see it, but they told me that he basically told them they were reaping what they had sown. According to him, everyone in the family knows how they treated Mark and me, how they took what I built to give it to my brother, and how their favoritism led them to ruin. My aunt told me that my mom started crying, but not because she was sorry, but because she did not understand how her own family could talk to her like that. My dad, on the other hand, tried to defend himself by saying that they always did what they thought was best for their children, but no one believed them. And speaking of Mark, he finally reappeared, although in the worst possible way. A couple of weeks ago, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. It was Mark. I had not heard from him since he disappeared after the coffee shop disaster, and honestly, I would have preferred it to stay that way. His tone of voice was unusually humble, almost pleading, and the first thing he said was, "I know you probably do not want to hear from me, but I need your help." It turns out Mark was in financial trouble. After being fired from several jobs, no surprise, he accumulated debts he could not pay. And now, with nowhere else to turn, he decided to look for me. It was a short conversation because I honestly had no interest in helping him. I asked him why he thought I would want to do anything for him after everything that had happened. His answer was the same old garbage because we are family. I hung up on him. Since then, I have been receiving text messages from him, some begging and others full of rage, accusing me of being selfish and cold. I have not answered any. I no longer have the energy to deal with him or his problems. My parents also tried to take his side, calling me to tell me that I should help my brother because he has always been there for you. That phrase made me laugh. When exactly has Mark been there for me? When he took the business I worked for years for? When he disappeared and let my parents face the consequences of his decisions? The irony of all this is that despite their constant favoritism towards Mark, they are now so desperate that they have even lost him. He has nothing to offer them. And I have no intention of putting myself in the line of fire for them again. Final update. This will be long and heavy, but I need to get it all out. If things already seemed complicated with my family, what happened recently has taken everything to the next level. I never thought the situation with Mark could get any worse, but here we are with consequences that have left me furious and, in a way, satisfied in a bitter way. A few weeks ago, I was at home after a long day at the cafe. I was reviewing some papers when I heard a knock on the door. It was late, so I was surprised that someone would knock. When I opened it, I found two men I did not recognize. They were big, intimidating-looking guys, casually dressed, but with an attitude that immediately put me on alert. The taller of the two spoke first, without even introducing himself. He asked me, "Are you Mark's sister?" I do not know why I admitted it at that moment, but I said yes. As soon as I did, the other man pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, unfolded it, and showed it to me. It was a document that looked like some kind of promissory note, and Mark's name was clearly written on it. They bluntly explained that Mark owed them a significant amount of money. According to them, he had gotten involved in gambling, first small bets, then bigger ones, until he lost more than he could afford to pay. When they tried to collect, Mark apparently told them that he had no money, but that his family could cover it. That is when the shorter of the two added something that chilled me to the bone. "We know you run a business. We thought you could help us resolve this little problem." I told them that I had nothing to do with Mark or his debts, that I had barely seen him in recent years, and that I was not going to pay a single penny. But they were not interested in my version of the story. One of them even laughed and said, "It is funny because Mark spoke wonders of his responsible sister. He said, 'You always fix things.'" I tried to stay calm, but I was shaking. I repeated that I was not going to pay, that they should look for him. That is when their tone changed. The taller man looked me straight in the eye and said, "If you do not pay, we will go after your parents. And believe me, we will not be so nice to them." That was a low blow. Not because I felt responsible for my parents, but because I knew they were not prepared to face something like that. As much as they have hurt and betrayed me, I could not ignore that they were in a vulnerable position. The men gave me a week to pay, left the IOU with me as if that was going to convince me, and left with a warning: "If you decide that it is not your problem, they will be our next visit." I could not sleep well for the next few days. Not because I was considering paying, but because I did not know what to do. I knew Mark was not going to solve this on his own. I knew my parents were easy targets, and I knew that if I did not do something, things could end very badly for everyone. Finally, I decided to confront my parents. I called them and told them what had happened. At first, my mom reacted as always, crying and saying that this was all my fault for not helping Mark when he needed me. My dad, on the other hand, tried to downplay the situation, saying that the guys were probably exaggerating to scare me, but when I showed them the IOU, they fell silent. My dad finally admitted that he knew Mark had been gambling, but never thought it would go this far. My mom started blaming the bad influences that, according to her, surrounded Mark. I made it clear to them that I was not going to pay, not for Mark or for them. I told them it was time for them to face the consequences of their decisions. If they wanted to protect themselves, they had to solve it themselves. Of course, they did nothing. A week later the same men came back, but this time not to my door. I found out through my aunt that they had gone looking for my parents. According to what she told me, the men went to the small apartment where they were staying, causing a scene in front of the neighbors. My mom begged them to give them more time, but they were not interested in excuses. That night, my dad called my cell phone, yelling that all of this was my fault, that if only I had paid, none of this would have happened. I hung up on him. I have not heard much from them since. My aunt says the men took what little they had of value and left them with a warning that if they did not pay soon, they would be back. I do not know if that is true or if my parents are exaggerating to manipulate me, but at this point I do not care anymore. As for Mark, no one knows where he is. I guess he is still running away, letting others face the consequences of his irresponsibility. I, on the other hand, am closing this chapter of my life. I have realized that no matter how hard I try to get away, my family will always find a way to drag me back into their chaos if I let them. But this was the last time. Seeing all of this blow up in their faces does not bring me joy, but it does not bring me sadness either. It is simply justice. They let Mark be their center, their favorite, their everything, and now they are paying the price of their decisions. I, meanwhile, am moving forward with my life stronger and more independent than ever.